Good evening. You're tuning in to AWANI Tonight with me, Saraya Mia. COVID-19 cases up again. Is a fourth wave in sight? And how can we balance development without compromising wildlife? That's coming up. Malaysia reported 2,551 COVID-19 cases on Friday, making it the second consecutive day daily new cases breached the 2,000 mark. What does this increasing trend of infections tell us? Is a fourth wave inevitable? We ask public health specialist from Kuwait University, Professor Datuk Dr. Syed Muhammad Al-Junid.
This is probably related to many factors. One of them is probably the community start to mobilize themselves, and they don't actually follow the SOP strictly, and it also might be due to the fact that the SOP that we are using now are not clear enough to the community, and also the weaknesses in the enforcement activities. So what we should do now, I think the government, as you mentioned just now, that they don't. Probably they will not be strict as the MCOs. I agree with that. We should not actually implement the generic MCOs that actually curtail the economic activities, but more focused activities should be carried out, preventive activities. So we need to, first of all, to relook at the reasons why the community are not able or do not want to follow the SOP. And we need also to mobilize the local resources, the communities at the ground level, to give them adequate information so that they will be able to influence their members of the society at the ground level.
He said an extensive approach with regard to educating the public on SOPs is especially important ahead of the Hari Raya festivals.
Decentralize some of the health promotion activities to the state government. Let the state government actually work at the ground level, because they know best what is going on in their vicinity, and they will probably be able to mobilize the community leaders to help them. And at the same time, we must not forget that we need to actually enhance the vaccination program, make sure that with the doses that we have at the moment, we should try to give this to the public as much as possible in order to increase the coverage of the vaccine.
COVID-19 vaccines currently being used in the country are still effective against the UK and South African variants. Health Minister Datuk Sri Dr. Adam Babas said the ministry is still awaiting reports from the World Health Organization and the US Centers for Disease Control and Prevention relating to effects of the vaccines against the two variants.
5 COVID-19 cases with UK B117 variant and 17 cases with the South African B1351 variant were detected yesterday. Meanwhile, Dr. Adam said the 10-day quarantine made compulsory to travellers arriving in Malaysia could still help detect positive COVID-19 cases involving the two variants. He said this was due to the fact that the travellers would be required to take a swab test 3 days before their departure date, and that the result of the test must be verified by the authority.
Beginning today, those facing up to 3 years imprisonment may qualify for community service under the Emergency Ordinance 2021. Previously, only those facing up to 3 months imprisonment were eligible for community service.
The ordinance introduces an amendment to Section 5 of the Offenders Compulsory Attendance Act 1954, which states that the court may, instead of such sentence or committal, make a compulsory attendance order requiring a person to partake in community service daily, not exceeding 12 months. The court shall also consider the character of such person, the nature and seriousness of the offence, and all other relevant circumstances.
Continuing our conversation on Malayan tigers from yesterday. Poaching and captive breeding are not the only threats facing tigers in the wild. The clearing of forests for agriculture and other development activities have led to habitat loss, making conservation efforts so much harder. We speak to Director of Perak State Parks Corporation, Shah Reza Hussein, on the right approach in balancing development without compromising the Malayan tigers.
In order for them to be able to mate, find a girlfriend or boyfriend, and repopulate themselves, the forest needs to be connected. So a lot of these areas are divided by plantation. So plantation owners need to buy into the idea of conservation and help build ecological corridors within their plantation, meaning an area connecting one forest to one forest. So the wildlife will naturally use the forested areas because it has better cover. They are not so exposed to humans and stuff like that.
Earlier this week, Energy and Natural Resources Minister Datuk Seri Dr. Shamsul Anwar Nasara signed a memorandum of understanding with Plantation Industries and Commodities Ministry and industry players to raise awareness on the urgency to save the Malayan tigers. Stakeholders involved include Department of Wildlife and National Parks or Berita and Malaysian Palm Oil Board.
This memorandum is to ensure that the plantation, especially the palm oil, understands which area of the plantation is in tiger range. Not all the plantations are in tiger range, but some of them are in important tiger range, and they need to come together with the ministry to look into how they can, number one, make sure that if the tiger roams in their forest, that is protected, it's not being killed or poached. So that means they have to keep an eye on everybody that's inside the plantation, working in the plantation. Number two is to make sure connectivity within forests that the plantation cuts through. There might be need to replant, regrow, rehabilitate some parts so that it becomes forest again for the wildlife to pass through, especially the tigers.
The Malayan tigers, or Panthera tigris jacksoni, are among 6 tiger subspecies that still exist. 3 subspecies had already been wiped out. According to a recent survey by Berita, there are only less than 200 Malayan tigers left globally. Senator Datuk Gwandi Kohoy is Malaysia's new Deputy Minister of Tourism, Arts and Culture. He was sworn in before Yang di-Pertuan Agong Al-Sultan Abdullah Riayatuddin Al-Mustafa Billah Shah today. Gwandi, who is Secretary General of Parti Solidariti Tanah Airku STAR, replaced Datuk Seri Dr. Jeffrey Kitingan for the post. STAR President Kitingan stepped down as Deputy Minister in September after he was appointed as Sabah's Deputy Chief Minister. We'll take a short break. Stay with us.
Data percuma bermula dengan Yes! 40GB percuma, eksklusif bagi rakyat P40. Kad SIM dihantar secara percuma, tidak perlu keluar rumah pun. Layari yes.my untuk dapatkan sekarang.
Welcome back. In a sweeping reshuffle, South Korean President Moon Jae-in replaced the Prime Minister and 6 other cabinet members in a bid to revive his party. This was after a devastating defeat in local elections. Moon named Kim Fu-kyum, a former Interior Minister, to succeed Chung Se-kyun as Prime Minister. The cabinet reshuffle came about a week after Moon's leading Democratic Party suffered crushing losses in his special elections for key mayoral posts amid political scandals and economic policy blunders. The election is seen a litmus test ahead of the presidential election in March 2022. Hong Kong media tycoon Jimmy Lai was sentenced to 14 months in prison after being found guilty of unauthorized assembly. Lai was one of the several pro-democracy activists found guilty of charges relating to one of the city's biggest ever protests in 2019. The 73-year-old founder of Apple Daily is a fierce critic of Beijing. The verdict comes as China is increasingly cracking down on Hong Kong's rights and freedoms. Several other activists were sentenced on Friday for participating in 2 demonstrations on August 18 and 31st August 2019. They include veteran politician Martin Lee, who is also known as the father of democracy in Hong Kong. Australia's federal court found that Google has misled consumers about collecting location data through Android mobile devices. The Australian Competition and Consumer Commission, which brought the case against Google, said the ruling was a world-first enforcement action on the issue.
The court found that Google violated Australian consumer law by collecting the location history of some users even when they had opted out of sharing that information. It also said Google failed to make clear to users that allowing tracking of web and app activity on their phones would also give permission to retain the location data. The tech giant has been embroiled in legal action in Australia in recent months as the government mulled and later passed a law to make Google and Facebook pay media companies for content on their platforms.
China is increasing the pressure on Japan over its plan to release treated water from the wrecked Fukushima nuclear power plant into the ocean. In a strongly worded tweet, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Zhao Lijian dares Japan officials to drink the liquid first to prove its safety.
However, when questioned about the comments, Japan Finance Minister Taro Aso evaded the queries and said that Fukushima water contamination levels are below international guideline limits. Tokyo's plan to release the wastewater into the Pacific Ocean announced earlier this week has been criticized by China, Taiwan and South Korea. Aso has said earlier that the water seemed safe enough to drink. The US State Department also indicated the plan appears to be in line with global discharge standards, while the International Atomic Energy Agency supported the planned releases, which would not start for another 2 years and are expected to last decades.
At least 8 people were killed and several others wounded in a mass shooting in Indianapolis. The incident occurred at a FedEx operations center near the Indianapolis International Airport late Thursday night. Police said they believe the shooter took his own life and there is no active threat to the community. The motive for the shooting is not yet known. 4 people were sent to the hospital, 1 in critical condition with gunshot injuries and 3 others with various other injuries. Chicago police have released graphic footage of an officer shooting dead a 13-year-old boy in an alley. Body cam video shows the policeman shouting, "Drop it," before shooting the boy, Adam Toledo, in the chest. Chicago Police Department said immediately that Toledo had a gun in his hand and that investigators recovered it from the scene. The incident occurred on March 29th. The release of the footage and other investigation materials came at a sensitive time with the ongoing trial of a police officer involved in the death of George Floyd and a recent police killing of another black man, Daunte Wright. Are China's COVID-19 vaccines less effective? Tonight on Consider This, we get Associate Professor Dr. Gaus Adam, Special Advisor to Minister of Science, Technology and Innovation, Khairi Jamaluddin, to answer this question. That is all we have for you on AWANI tonight. Get the latest news updates on COVID-19 and COVID-19 vaccines from astroawani.com and Astro AWANI app. I'm Saraya Mia. We'll see you again.